Welcome to DM's Discuss.
I'm Mike.
I'm Chris.
I'm Scott.
Welcome to DM's Discuss, where this week DMs will discuss Tears Court.
That's right. Today we are taking the adventure out of the tavern and into the bar. As in a court of laws, we bring forward divisive and debatable cases of D&D in front of the rules lawyers.
And today we have a guest juror, Lynn. Lynn, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, hello. Hi, I'm Lynn. I'm a nurse by day. I'm a dog father by the evening and dungeon master late at night. I've only played D&D for the last 6 years. I currently run a heavily modified Curse of Strahd campaign, basically ripped off r/Curse of Strahd, but I pretend to be original. And I also play a Gold Grubbin Gerblin Stinkbeaner in a game with Scott. That's my background in D&D.
Yeah, so how'd you get started in D&D? What was your first foray into D&D? What got you into it?
Well, I mean, my first qualification is being a general nerd, but I've seen D&D in all sorts of popular culture, and I thought, I'm not nerdy enough for that. And funny enough, my longtime girlfriend was like, oh my god, I saw the coolest thing on The Big Bang Theory. We have to play it.
That is not how she talks at all. You might want to try that again, because I'm pretty sure she'll be listening to this episode. So
no. Okay. No, that absolutely is not how she talks at all. But honestly, like the way she, the way she talked was actually more angry. Lynn, I saw a great episode of Big Bang Theory. We got where they played D&D. We gotta play it. So we rounded up 3 of my most rules lawyer friends possible, and we got to it, and I hated it. And now 6 years later, I somehow love it now.
Yeah, it's funny how the right group of people can really bring it out. And I met Lynn. I met Lynn through one of the players in our Wednesday game. Mike is the DM, and Chris and I play as players at the table. And one of the players there DMs this. Lynn gets busy and can't do every Sunday, so he kind of takes turns with one of our other players. And one Sunday will be Lynn's Curse of Strahd as him as a DM, and another Sunday will be the other friend DMing Dungeon of the Mad Mage. So told Lynn about the podcast and decided to bring him on for an episode. Lynn plays some fun characters, so thought it might be fun to get him on.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So with that, do we want to hop into the first bit of Tears Court? I think we should start with something personal. And Chris, you brought up something about a ruling that your uncle made around polymorph.
I want Chris to read this topic verbatim, because I think the way it was worded in the sheet was really funny. And
okay, that's fair. So essentially, we were, preparing the docket for today's court session, and I wrote down why Chris's uncle is really wrong about polymorph. Because I found it ridiculous that he had his opinion, because he's been playing D&D for far longer than me. So anyways, what happened was that I went home for the first time in quite some time. I'd not seen my uncle for several years. And we were talking about this and that in D&D and swapping stories. And he described to me a situation that he thought was hilarious, where there's a villain there fighting, a fairly important one. And one of their casters polymorphed him into a mouse. I'm like, oh, classic move. You could do a lot with that. You can trap him, save him for later. And he's like, yeah. And then the warrior walks up to him and hit him and gets a crit on it. And that instantly killed him without anything, because as you all know, within the rules, it says that if you receive damage equal to double your total hit point maximum, you instantly die. Now,
No.
And that's what I said. That's not how it works. Polymorph says that if you drop to 0 hit points, damage taken carries over to your other form and you revert to that form. And he tried to claim that doesn't matter, because the rules say that if you take more than double your health as damage, then you die.
Wait, but so he's been playing D&D for a really long time, right?
Yes, he is fairly new to 5e, I will say that.
Right, so we're talking about 5e because we love 5e, and 5e is what we play all the time. Has polymorph changed?
Not that I'm aware of.
See, because I just looked up polymorph from 3.5, and polymorph from 3.5, it says, if slain, the subject reverts to its original form, though it remains dead.
And that might be where his understanding is. Like 5e as written, I think like you take double your hit points and you're dead. I think your dead refers to your like current form. And I would say like the
Well,
polymorph rule like overrides
Well, that's just
that.
No,
like,
so
it's meant
yeah,
to.
so
You don't take death saving throws.
yeah, so so polymorph in 5e, when your form is reduced to 0 hit points, you revert back to your previous form at whatever hit points you had, and the damage over and above your form's hit points, it transfers to your actual character.
No, that's exactly what I was saying. Is that whole dead rule refers to they're writing that being like you're in normal form, but then when you actually read the 5e polymorph, it does outline it reverts as a result of dropping to 0, and excess damage does carry over. So in 5e, yeah, like he's absolutely wrong here. In 5e, anyways.
In 5e, it depends on what you're looking at. I think, yeah, looking at the 3.5 spell, it looks like
Well, here's a question: what level is that spell in 3.5?
4. It's a 4th level spell.
Oh, so interesting. Well, I can see why they changed it, because this turns a 4th level spell into potentially, as long as they fail to save, a guaranteed instant kill with no death saves.
That's the other thing, though. Polymorph in 3.5 was a willing creature.
Well, there you go. Since they had the whiz save for unwilling, it means that you can do stuff like that. If it did work like that, I mean, it would be so easy to just, burn 4th level spell slots till it turns something into a rat, and then guaranteed instant death, no save.
Yeah, just disintegrate a rat every time.
You don't even disintegrate. It has like 1 hit point. You can hit it with a sword. If you do 2 damage, it dies forever.
I think with 3.5, like the 3.5 ruling is a little weird. Like if it's not willing creatures, if it's only willing creatures in 3.5, even then it's like, hey, you 100 HP party member, I'm gonna turn you into a mouse, and then you get caught in a mouse trap and you're dead. I just find I can see why they changed the spell.
I think the spell in 3.5 has an entirely different use, right? 3.5, it's almost like you're just almost like druid wild shaping party members or yourself for combat. You're not using it as an offensive
Yeah, you'd
spell.
never use it as like a scouting spell. Like, oh, be a bird, go look around, because then it's just like, and you die. Well, I think that's a change for the bad personally, is having the distinction between polymorph and true polymorph, and not being able to instant kill things.
Yeah, then
absolutely.
What are your thoughts here?
Well, I know nothing about 3.5, but I'm a big proponent of the rule of cool. Honestly.
So rule of cool, let your 100 HP big bad turn into a 1 HP mouse and let them just stomp it to death.
Well, I'm a very permissive DM in that, like, because I don't know the rules very well, so I let my players have a lot of liberty with it, to good or bad. But I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, ultimately, it is a game. This is what I'm arguing. It is a game. And if honestly the player has fun in the moment of things, I'm willing, as a DM, I'm willing to let it slide. However, if I'm a fellow player, well, I'm gonna argue this to my death.
See, my thing is, it's a very slippery slope when you start making rulings like that in games, especially in longer campaigns.
Absolutely.
If they polymorph and then disintegrate, like the first like minor BBEG that you throw, like the first like minor bad guy you throw at them, and then you let that stand, then that's just their tactic forever.
That's
right.
Yeah.
Why would you not do that?
Yeah, I mean the same way if you let someone throw a tower at a bunch of wolves and then wall of force and then wall of fire inside that's going to be their tactic for the next 4 wolf fights.
Yeah, so, they can just continue to waste their time in this wasteland.
So I hate it. I would never allow it at my table. It trivializes combat way too much, and there is rule of cool, but I'm sorry, polymorphing the BBG into a 1 HP mouse and throwing a bottle of ketchup at it. No, that's not happening at my table.
Okay, hold on. But what if this is okay? Let's just say like the scenario is like, okay, look, your players are cornered. Okay, it is literally just the 1 HP wizard versus the BBEG. The BBG walks up to the wizard and says, "You're gonna die now." But the wizard casts polymorph, and this big bad guy happens to fail. So you're saying at this point, you wouldn't get this guy have the cool moment of just killing of clutching this win for his party.
No,
Uh,
absolutely not.
Oh,
no,
okay.
See,
I
I would
would.
say no. Also, just because there's so many other ways that once he fails it, you can clutch the win without it. Like he's a
Exactly.
worm for an hour, which means you could like full heal the party, ready a bunch of actions to beat the ever loving shit of the guy. Or if you want to be a sick fuck, like why not just get a wall of force, make an inch wide, put the worm in it, and then drop concentration so he reverts to his true form inside a 1 inch unbreakable box.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see, what I was thinking is he becomes a worm, you put him in like a handy haversack, and then drop the handy haversack in a portable hole.
yeah. I think with this situation, like no, I see. Here's the thing: a lot of people think clutching the win is killing stuff all the time, and I think the wizard last standing, a polymorph, turning this thing into, a mouse, bringing it to some other powerful caster to entrap this guy to deal with later. I think that's a win in itself, and him getting the party healed and back up and being like, "Hey, I got a surprise for you," and brings him over to this caged BBEG. I think that's a cool little arc, and I just think that whole, because I think if you're gonna let someone polymorph, stomp on a mouse, you got to be consistent with rulings, and I just wouldn't want them to do that to every BBEG.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
It's a
That's fair.
fourth
That's
level
fair.
spell. It shouldn't be an
That's
insta
fair.
kill.
Especially
fair.
because that situation, there's so many other things they can do beyond getting like a really easy instant kill that still lead to victory. I wouldn't
Okay.
feel too bad about denying like the cool moment because I'm like, well, think about it for longer than step on it, and there's a lot of other things you can do to him.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm all for rule of cool. I don't necessarily know that situation would be rule of cool. Um, like I think there are other spells that are a little higher level that could do something similar. Like for example, somebody plane shifting the BBG out and be like, okay, we don't have to deal with this guy for a while. But as a fourth level spell, I think giving it an insta kill kind of, tag or in brackets is just a bit too powerful.
I mean, realistically, your BBEG like has legendary resistances, and as a DM, you can just say nope, that doesn't happen anytime. But I mean, my point is, I feel like if you rule a coolest, just be consistent. Like
Yeah.
if you just tell your players this one time, because I like you, I will bend the rules for you like this once, but it will not happen again. I mean, I think it can work, but I think it depends on the table, because I feel like if for instance, like when I play like a table with Yashi back in the day, like when we played this dungeon crawler that was very very by the book and everything, like this would not fly. We would never ever do this, and I'm fine with that. But like sometimes when I play with newbies who are completely new to the game but they just want to cast cool shit, I think sometimes honestly, why not, if it's only a 1 or 2 off,
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, you just have to make sure that every creature you make from that point forward is a shape changer.
Or you know what, the bad guy comes back and says, psych, I'm the bad guy's brother and I polymorph you now. What's up? What's up?
What's up,
That
bitch?
reminds me.
Anything you do, the DM can do too. So what's up? Everyone gangster until you get polymorphed.
I don't know. I think I think there are things that I do like give leniency for. This wouldn't be one of them.
Yeah.
If the guy was super low, if the BBG was super low already because they've been doing tons of damage to him, and this was a last ditch polymorph and then one more attack, or like a few attacks, then yeah.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Like Chris said, once he's
yeah,
polymorphed, if you then have the whole party get up and ready actions, and then like drop polymorph and hit him with all of the actions as soon as the poly drops, like that's a thing you can do for sure. I think that works, but I don't
yeah,
think, but only if he's already low and all of the attacks that hit the like unpolymorph BBG are the things that actually kill him. I don't think
yeah,
doing the damage of the full HP of the rabbit you fucking turned him into should be a thing to kill like the end boss of a campaign.
yeah. I agree.
Even if you've already exhausted all of his legendary resistances, like there's a reason that this BBG has been around for so long. It has been like the end goal for your party for so long. I feel like it cheapens the moment of defeating the BBG if it's something that's super easy. You can do it like level 6.
That's true, because then it kind of feels like, why didn't someone else think of this?
Yeah, I almost wouldn't let my players do this to like, an orc boss encampment. Like it just seems like such a way to trivialize combat that I'd be very very apprehensive about like letting them do this. Anyways, I think that's good for that topic. Do we want to make a ruling on whether Chris's uncle is wrong?
Yeah, I think the ruling is 5th edition, absolutely wrong. 3.5, probably right.
Yeah, I'm gonna go the same there. 3.5, probably right, but if we're talking the scope of 5th edition, yeah, absolutely wrong. Any damage breaking that form would carry over to normal form and revert the creature form. Lynn, what's your take?
I know nothing about 3.5, so I will not speak of things I know nothing about. But as for 5e, as written, oh yeah, hell yeah, this guy's so wrong. Send him to Tallahassee. Get him out of town. But I mean, rule of cool, maybe it depends.
All right, fair. Chris?
Yeah, so I think as I start off with this, is I think Michael is very wrong. I think this is absolutely goes against the way it's written. So I say wrong on this one.
All right, court spoken. Let's move to our next topic. So our next topic is nerfing canon classes and spells. Should DMs be allowed to overrule rules as written /raw? And this comes from a Reddit post by Stinky125842. And I'm just gonna kind of paraphrase. I'm gonna paraphrase this. Paraphrase this. Oreo flurry on the side. Do some dipping. If you haven't tried like warm salty fries and an Oreo flurry, try it. It's really good.
Scott, I used to respect you, but now no. I'm sorry, no.
Frosties and fries are a thing that have been around forever.
And they're amazing.
Stop
Why?
judging.
No,
Because it's delicious.
I have tried it. I tried it today. Still not. No.
All right, can we kick them off?
Okay.
Yeah,
fine.
I think so.
I
This
play
is why I'm
Shortest lived guest
Jessica.
session in history.
I play a level 8 Oath of the Ancients Tiefling Paladin with purple skin called Yakko. My DM, who is in all fairness is a great DM, hasn't made a single game for us not fun or too easy, has nerfed my Paladin. As I've read more and more about D&D, I realize I'm not exactly playing a full Paladin. The nerfs my DM has applied. Divine Smite doesn't crit. I can't stack Divine Smite with other smites, like Branding Smite, etc. Divine Smite counts as a spell, so it breaks concentration spells, almost making other spells not an option. I have to recast Find Steed every day. Either me or my steed can make an attack in combat, or both. Either me or my steed can make an attack in combat, not both. Due to heavy armor, I roll disadvantage on every dex skill check, not just stealth and athletics. Due to being a tiefling, I roll disadvantage on persuasion. Brackets, understandable. So I think this guy's asking, he's like, I can't tell if these nerfs are fair. I think I'm going to come obsolete because other people are scaling, like my fighter, my rogue, my bard are scaling, and like, paladins scale with some of that stuff.
Yeah, that makes zero sense to me. Like, so there are things in there that I can understand. The persuasion, depending on the world the DM's created, if you're in a world where tieflings are super rare, or where like there's a tiefling race that has enslaved a bunch of people, or like something of that nature, rolling disadvantage as a tiefling totally makes sense to me. But everything else in here is like just entirely handcuffing a character because you don't want to balance your encounters properly.
Exactly. And yeah, as I said, like the tiefling thing, that's story dependent. Who knows if that's justified? But like just changing the rules to just make a paladin less strong, like Divine Smite not critting, like the rogues can crit. Why would you have an issue with Divine Smite?
Yeah, does sneak attack not crit now?
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering about that too. Like, I can understand Divine. If there's one thing I can give this DM leeway on personally, I think it's the Divine Smite crit. I think there can be an argument made about the attack happens and Divine Smite is applied afterwards. And like when you have sneak attack, yeah, actually, I'm not quite sure on that. It just feels.
Well, here's the thing. It feels cheap because, you get to choose a Divine Smite after an attack hits.
Yeah, but
also a rogue sneak attacks pretty much every turn.
And that's why I kind of backed off where I was going there, because for me it's like I've seen paladins being like, "Oh, I crit? Yeah, I'm going to toss a 5th level Divine Smite in there." And when you have a character, and I have felt this as a player, when you have a character that can deal 5 to 500 damage, how do you balance around that? How do you balance around a paladin hitting?
They're not going to do 500 damage unless there's like a whole bunch of other shit that's going on. But like a massive amount of damage, absolutely. But you balance that around the fact that like it's already balanced in the game. Right? Like paladins never get more than 2 attacks unless they multi-class, right? like
Do
super deep
rogues?
multi-class. No, but rogues get sneak attack almost every fucking turn, which is the point, right?
Yeah, I guess
Paladins
that's true.
need to choose when they divine smite. And like to me, it makes sense for the character because divine smite is like you channeling your god when you know you've done something you're supposed to do, right? So as a paladin, you hit and you're like, you know what, this is a fiend. My god would want me to do more to this, and you channel that belief into more damage. So if you know that you struck really cleanly and it's going to be a more critical blow against your foe, why would you not channel more of that energy? It makes sense to me as like just as a character thing that paladins would be able to channel that might into an attack.
Yeah, I don't know, like, how do you envision Divine Smite? Because I envision Divine Smite as you hit with your weapon, and then after your weapon hits, you're deciding to like pulse a bunch of radiant energy through your weapon. Whereas a rogue sneak attack, I think, is just part of the attack. So like to me, from that perspective, it's almost like, okay, your weapon attack could crit, but your Divine Smite is just an extra radiant burst after the fact that's not benefiting from that crit. Like that's the one way I could see that making sense from
But
a
I
yeah.
don't know though. It makes sense to me like paladin if you crit as a paladin with your melee weapon attack, you know that you struck something critical, right? Like you hit like an artery or you sunk your sword deeper than you normally would or like something happens when you crit. I feel like you should have the intuition as a paladin to be able to channel more energy into that.
Well, I think here, again, a lot of this comes down to also the perception of the fact that they can choose it when they crit. But at the same time, like, they are using a spell slot. Like, if
Mhm.
you use a 5th level Divine Smite, think of how much damage a 5th level spell a wizard could do to a large group of enemies together. It's probably more than that one crit Divine Smite does to a single target. At the end of
Oh,
the day, as
100%. A
much as
cone of
it does
cold.
feel kind of unfair that they could be like, I'm going to knock off this spell slot because I got a crit, that's a paladin for you. They are unreliable, massive bursts of damage when their god, tells them to.
Exactly. On average, probably a 5th level spell slot from a wizard with a cone of cold or something similar does way more damage than a 5th level divine smite, right?
I think these are some great points here, guys. But I think I think this is my biggest problem with like the DM's ruling in that post is that um, I think absolutely in the session 0 you can sit down with a character and have an open discussion about stuff you do and don't allow in your campaign and this and that. But ultimately, I think in the spirit of the game, if you like try to limit what one person can do, it really kind of cheapens the moment for them, because let's be honest, anyone who's played a paladin will know there's no better feeling than when the chips are down, you roll that 20 and you pump in all those smites into that sucker.
Yep.
Yep.
Spell slots, you mean smite slots, right? That I mean that's a paladin meme like since forever, I feel like.
Absolutely. And I feel like that goes back to the other thing we were talking about where divine smite breaks concentration. Like you can cast so many spells without concentrating on them. It makes zero sense that channeling divine energy through a melee hit would break the concentration on something else you were holding. Like I can't bless my party and also fuck up this fiend.
Yeah.
Why?
I think there's a lot of other spells that are not concentration that do similar damage and do similar things. A lot of cantrips at that level will do 3d8. So no, I don't like the only thing I could maybe get behind was like the crit, because I have been in situations where that paladin does pump a 5th level spell slot and basically one shot something. And you know what? I get that that's cool too. And in the campaign with Lynn, I actually do play 5 paladin, 1 bard, 1 warlock. So I do throw a hexblade's curse and I wait for that 19 or 20.
Mhm.
And the other day we were fighting, well, on Sunday we were fighting this big spider creature, these powerful spider creatures that are doing good amounts of damage. And first attack hit, second level smite, second attack hit, second level smite. So the divine smite is a very core aspect of paladin. I'd be inclined to not
It's the
touch
only
it.
reason paladins do damage.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to not touch it at all, really.
And honestly, we've been talking a lot about the Divine Smite crit thing, but like, personally, everything else that he complains about is absolutely ridiculous. Like, having disadvantage on dex saves in heavy armor, recasting Fine Steed every day.
Yeah, not
Like,
dex
that's complete.
saves, not dex
So,
saves,
yeah, dex checks, right.
dex checks. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything else.
Yeah,
No
I,
sense.
That's to me that's ridiculous. That's going even beyond like I don't like this one thing of damage to just I just don't like everything you're doing as a character. When there's this many changes to a person,
Yeah, like honestly, if somebody did this to a paladin I was playing, I would just reroll a different character because it
yeah,
would
it's
be
like I
not
guess you
fun to
don't
play
want
a
me to play a
paladin.
paladin if you're going to do
Yeah.
all this to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in agreement there. I understand, like, obviously, Dex does affect certain checks, like raw. I believe, heavy armor does affect certain Dex skill checks raw, like stealth and I believe athletics. But stealth for sure, you have disadvantage on stealth
Stealth
if
for
you're
sure,
wearing
yeah.
certain
And
heavy armor.
swimming.
Yeah, but like, why would heavy armor affect your sleight of hand? Like, you can walk around in heavy armor and still be able to grab some from someone's pocket. So yeah, I don't agree with that. The tiefling rolling disadvantage on persuasion, if that's
That's
the way the
subjective.
world is set up, yeah, I think that's okay.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. The Find Steed thing makes zero sense to me because like the spell itself says it doesn't disappear until it drops to 0 hit points. There's no duration. It's just like you cast Find Steed and you get a steed. If it dies, you have to get another one.
I also really don't get the doubling up of the fact that not only does he have to recast every day, but he also nerfs the steed where it doesn't even get to do its attack. So like, why are you so afraid of him just having a horse? Because you've already made it so the horse can't attack.
Yeah, like one or the other. If he has to summon it every day, then it gets its own turn and its own attack.
Yeah, so I mean, do we want to make a ruling on this DM? And just to be clear, don't send any hate these guys away. We're just kind of looking at this stuff. It's our opinion, and at the end of the day, these are discussions that players should be having with their DMs if they're not okay with the way the DM is running it. But obviously, respect your DM, respect your players. So I'll start with a ruling here, I guess. This DM's gone a little too far. He's taken away a lot of really core aspects of Paladin, and if this was me, I probably would ask to change my Paladin levels at this point. It's probably not going to happen, or maybe hey, like kill me off and let me reroll something because my character just doesn't feel good anymore.
Yep, I would 100% agree. The only thing from here that I could justify at all is if the world is built around tieflings being a race that would pull disadvantage from people, like if they're just a race that's like looked down upon in the world that's been created, I could totally see that. That makes sense to me. Everything else in here is ridiculous. The DM is like just nerfing paladins for the sake of nerfing paladins, and I would reroll. I wouldn't want to play a paladin anymore in this campaign.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing. I have become really big on familiars. They're fun, they're cool, and as long as you're a player who kind of preps their familiar's turn and has dice ready and has some of their familiar stuff ready, I don't think they mess with combat too much. So the nerfs on Find Steed just makes that spell feel so much worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, up the same way. That's 6 nerfs against a direct character's class, which feels just like you're too lazy to balance around them. Like, I have to say, I'd imagine this must be some kind of undead themed campaign where this paladin is really just carving through it. And in that case, like, you can just be better. You shouldn't, instead of nerfing your character, make things stronger. Like, this isn't the answer.
I agree. I'm always on the side of don't go tell the player you're nerfing their stuff. Just buff the enemies and don't tell
make
them.
everything harder.
Yeah.
What about you, Lynn?
Oh, absolutely. I honestly like. I mean, I would even go even further actually, and just straight up find a new DM. Because I feel like it's a bit of a here's the thing. Because like it's like I'm okay with nerfs and having an open discussion about things the DM doesn't want on the table. But I feel like when you're willing to kind of like have such a one-sided conversation about like changing a core aspect of one class in particular that only affects you and not the other players, I feel like it opens a bit of a can of worms as to what else are they gonna like fiddle with it in terms of like the on a one-way street basis. So
Yeah, maybe
for me,
this
that
DM
would
just
not
doesn't
be
like
fun.
this player. This DM just doesn't like this player, wants him to leave the game.
I don't necessarily know about that. I mean, in reading some of this post, he does say my DM, who in all fairness is a great DM, hasn't made a single game for us not fun or too easy. So clearly this DM like has some good aspects. And this guy just didn't realize those nerfs. Yeah, I mean, I think this is just a discussion. Like maybe the DM doesn't really know that this guy feels this way. And if he comes back after this post and be like, hey, I was reading and some of this stuff, and maybe the DM will go, yeah, okay, I'll, compromise on these.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, shit's not going to be too easy if you can't crit on Divine Smite. and you can't smite without breaking concentration on any other spell. Like that's just making stuff harder by nerfing one class, right?
Alrighty, well, looks like the court's spoken on that one.
Yeah, I think that one's unanimous.
Yeah, for sure. Does anyone want to introduce next topic?
So our next one comes from us from this is a Twitter post from Quanchai Moria, and this says Side Product 7 RPG character sheets. Love making custom sheets for the system I'm running. Had a good run Dungeon Crawl Classics. Already made a "You Are Dead" stamp that I could violently smash onto a freshly deceased character sheet. And really what this is about is the idea of adding the character sheets and other stuff into elements of the roleplay. And, how do we feel about that?
I don't know. For me, this is just straight up about, is it okay for your DM to smash a "You're Dead" stamp onto your sheet? Because I get attached to my characters, and I would be pissed.
Yeah, I feel like this needs to be something that comes up in a session 0, where like, how is player death treated? Is it something that you're expecting in this campaign? Like Chris told us in the Thursday nights to like come prepared with a couple of characters because one of them's probably going to die. So
I
like
regret saying
in that case, yeah, you're welcome for that Twilight Cleric. So in that situation, I could understand, right? Like players know that death is a thing that's going to happen, so maybe a DM stamping a "You're Dead" thing on your sheet isn't a huge deal. But if that hasn't been discussed, or if you're in a campaign where your player's been playing the same character for like 2 or 3 years and then they die in some dramatic way and you just like fucking reach into your pocket, pull out a stamp and like reach across the table, that might be a little bit in poor taste.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a really great point there. But I mean, I've run a campaign that's like completely like I would have loved to have a "You're Dead" stamp, just because like it was a West Marches style campaign where I literally encourage people, bring a new character every week. I do not care. Anything is okay. Even homebrew, if you just talk to me about it ahead of time. And honestly, and they make some weird and wacky and lots of joke characters. And if they died, I don't think they actually cared about it, because we had one of the silliest deaths where like someone tried to I forgot what they tried to do, but they try to like throw a fireball into a bag of holding. And what happened was that I think I rolled. I said roll a sleight of hand, because if you don't close it fast enough, you're gonna get cooked. And well, the I think the D6 HP sorcerer just vamooshed from it. And we it was nothing personal. We just laughed, whipped out another character, and just kept going. But yeah, this is definitely something. Session zeros are important for a reason. Set the expectations.
I think a lot of this comes down to what's agreed on beforehand. I wish I had thought of this before I read it. I kind of thought of it, but I've seen posts about people talking about games they joined where DMs asked for their character sheets to like destroy them afterwards, and they got pretty angry about that, which is something an entirely different level. Where like if you dies away, like the DM ripping up your character sheet and you weren't expecting it, that's not okay. If you tell everyone ahead of time, as everyone said, session 0, then yeah, like why not go for it? Just make sure everyone knows it's coming and is fine with it, and people can opt out if they don't want it.
Yeah, I've played characters where if the DM reached across the table and my character died and ripped up the sheet, I'd probably just cry. So like I don't think I'd be okay with that unless it was something that was agreed upon and it was like something that had been discussed and we knew it was coming. Just the shock of having my character sheet ripped up after I've like poured my heart and soul into a character for any number of like weeks or months is that sucks.
Yeah, I completely agree there. I think for me, most of the time I would not be okay with this. I think the only time I'd be okay with this if it was a one shot or joked about beforehand, like, hey, there's a "You're Dead" stamp, and if you die, I'm gonna stamp your character sheet, or if you die, you need to burn your character sheet in that barrel over there. Like, if it's agreed upon beforehand. But a lot of times for me, I play in more serious campaigns, these really long running campaigns where I've been playing the same character for years, and if my character dies, that's enough of a like gut punch for me. And I have cried at character deaths. I cried when, I don't know if you know, but I cried when Rickper left, and that wasn't even my fucking character. But you get attached to these things, and there's something that holds sentimental value to you. So to have somebody like put salt in that wound, for me, I don't know. This is not okay 95% of the time for me.
Okay, idea there. Now that I think about it, well, what if instead of like it's the character sheet instruction, it's character sheet honoring, where like you have a weekend, a super like meat grinder campaign. End of it, I'm especially thinking of Matt's house because he has that little like lake near him. You get a little small wooden boat, the character sheet is going on, you light on fire, Viking funeral.
Love it.
I
We should
love
do
it.
that.
Yep, I
That'd
like
be
it.
fucking awesome.
I like
That
it.
would be such a good end to like a weekend of D&D. It's just like, let us not forget the characters who died this weekend. We should send them off into the afterlife.
I think, Chris, as a break between whenever the level 18 campaign ends and whenever you start the new campaign, we have a meat grinder weekend where we do that. I think that would be fucking fantastic.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I think for me, it's like, like Rick Per leaving in that campaign was pretty impactful for me. I think that's been one of my favorite, and I think that's going to be on one of the upcoming DMMs. That's been one of my most impactful like RP moments ever.
Yeah. Oh,
To the point
absolutely.
where I'm looking at getting a tattoo to like memorialize that, or like for me that character in that relationship was just a fun one for me. And yeah, I don't know. The salt in the wound here with the stamp is I feel this guy's joking, but yeah, I don't know. Be careful here.
Yeah. My final ruling on this is that as long as everyone has agreed to it and they're well aware it's coming, it's fine. Never do this without permission. And also, something often is a moot point, as most people I know are strictly digital today. So, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, my ruling here is don't fucking do this. Don't fucking do this unless you're sure everybody is super on board with it. People get really attached to these characters, and these become a sentimental and personal thing for them. Um, so, you know, if you have a stamp that honors them and says, fallen in battle and has a cool shield and some sort, that might be cool for a character. But you're dead is just kind of like, haha. I don't know. I don't like it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with both of those sentiments. Only do this if everybody at the table has absolutely agreed that this is a thing and they know that it's coming. Otherwise, this is just a dick move.
I mean, I'm not. I'm basically going to parrot the same thing here because ultimately it's just about respect. Because like I mean, I play and run mostly like really non-whimsical and nonsensical like campaigns and characters, but even then, like if you did that to one of my characters, actually, well, if you did this my goblin stinkbeard, I actually wouldn't mind. I think that'd be a badge of honor. But again, like I can see why anyone else would feel otherwise, and it shouldn't be a surprise at any point.
Yeah. And of course, this does apply to character sheets as well. Of course, rules as written, it is still proper for the DM to eat your miniature if you do die.
yeah, the mini's fair game.
Yeah,
that is in the basic rules, and everyone knows that's coming.
So let's talk about, because I think it's an interesting offshoot. Let's talk about your dead ideas real quick. So Viking funeral, eating your mini. I'm gonna throw one out here. A lot of people are using D&D Beyond. Grab your player's cell phone and smash it. That's
Here
another.
I thought you were gonna say like remove the character from the campaign, but no, you guys
break
just
their
go to
phone.
destruction
Oh
of
my God.
personal property. Good job, Scott.
Sounds good. We get to move on here.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that one was
All right.
also unanimous.
Lynn, our guest, do you want to introduce the next topic?
Okay, so our next topic is a post by Pat06S on r/RPG Horror Stories about whether or not it is fair for a DM to know a player's stats. Does it create an interesting system of gameplay for the DM to go in blind?
That is actually kind of an interesting question, I think.
Do you guys, as DMs, do you look at your player stats? I tend to, like, I don't look at my players' character sheets. I don't look at their HP. I don't look at their max. I don't look at their current. I basically never know my like. I guess the one thing I write down is passive perception and passive like investigation. But other than that, I'm not keeping track of anything else.
All right, so I hope my players don't listen in, but I totally do. But not for the reason to like, oh, I want to know their exact weaknesses. No, actually the opposite. I make sure to note down what languages, neat features they have, so I can create encounters that that would make them feel cool. Like how monks can catch arrows. Hell yeah, I'm gonna have an archer peppering them with arrows at one point because I want them to use their ability and feel cool. but because it's in the end, I think it's a mentality thing of just like the previous post. If it's the players versus the DMs, or are we just friends playing a game together?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think D&D should ever be framed as like the DM against the party.
Oh
I think
yeah.
that's the wrong way to approach the
Oh
game.
yeah.
And like to me, I do know I look at it and for the exact same reasons as Lynn. I look at like what languages people know, and also I look at like what the weaknesses are of players to the point where I know some people have dump stats, and I don't want to make a creature that's going to throw saves at people that they can't possibly succeed in. Right? Like I've done that as a player to things that have been designed by DMs, and it feels weird and wrong
Oh
to be
yeah.
able to
Yeah.
cast things that things just cannot possibly save from. And I feel like as a player, that would be awful. So I always try to design my encounters as things that are challenging and difficult, but that aren't things that literally nobody in the party can like succeed on.
Yeah, so I think there's an important distinction there. And when I say I don't look at stats, it's like I'm not keeping track of your HP. I'm not keeping track of your dexterity. I do like look at AC, passive investigation, passive perception,
Oh,
and
for
things
sure.
like languages and knowing your players' classes. Absolutely. I think knowing your players' classes and what they're capable of. For example, should you put a monster there that needs to be plane shifted out or it's going to TPK, and the only way they're going to save is with a plane shift? Do your characters have plane shift? I think that's perfectly fine to look up if that's something you want to, like they're making arcana checks, or you guys can tell this things from a different dimension, and maybe someone has that eureka moment of I'm going to shift this guy the fuck out of here. I think it's okay to know your players languages and capabilities. I don't necessarily know you should have a spreadsheet with their raw numbers.
Oh. I mean, I don't think. Well, most DMs, I feel like would not be able to keep up with all the little micromanagement of the player sheets in the middle of all that DMing.
Yeah, no, I don't like keep a spreadsheet of people's stats. I just make sure that I'm aware of what like the weaknesses are going in and keep track of stuff like that.
Yeah.
I obviously like characters are going to change over time and stuff like that, but um I feel like to design encounters properly, you need to have that information.
I think part of that too is as a DM, just kind of knowing classes, or knowing that rogues can sneak attack, and if you have a swashbuckler, place a few enemies far away so that they can do their little attack, run away, attack someone else, run away. I think it's important to know your players' classes and the limitations and capabilities of those classes. I just don't think you should be looking at their sheet like every session.
Yeah, I think a lot of this, like where this question is coming from, is like the belief in adversarial DMing, where it's like it's you against them, which like no DM does that. Like, especially I generally start off and just balance things around just raw CR recommendations based on number of players level and stuff like that. And if I'm running like a campaign with a persistent antagonist, like the cult one, yeah, they will eventually know your stuff and get better at fighting you because that's their job. But at the same time, at the end of the day, if this is something you're concerned about, like, oh no, the DM, like, they know our whole party, they know our stats, like, if they wanted to kill you, they would just drop, like, Tiamat in the middle of a fight. Like, it's not hard to kill players as a DM. You just be unfair. And, like, knowing the fact that you only have a 12 dex instead of a 16, that's not going to be the difference if your DM is actively trying to kill you, because then they're just a bad DM and they can just upscale the challenge. So
Yeah,
I really
exactly.
feel like, what does a DM gain by like going nitpicking through your character sheets that they couldn't gain if their goal is to like literally know the party and kill you antagonistically? They could just throw something difficult at you.
Yeah, they could just list something that's like way too high CR for you to deal with, and then if you choose not to run away, you deal with the consequences, right? Like I don't think if people are DMing in a way that is like conducive to the game, that this isn't an issue at all. This you will only run into this issue if you have bad DMs that are actively trying to kill you.
Oh, absolutely. I think this the post basically reeks of I don't trust my DM. I don't want. I think I want to play against him, and it just from a get go just seems like this guy either is hurt or wants to make trouble at the table from the get go.
Yeah, I mean, there are things I agree with and things I disagree with. I don't mind. As a DM, I think you have the right to look at your player stats. You have the right to look at their character sheets. As a DM, you are the god of the universe, essentially. So why wouldn't you know this stuff about players? Why
Oh
wouldn't you know
yeah.
how strong they are, their capabilities? Um, I tend not to do it not from an adversarial point of view, but the fact that like your character is your character, you do what you can do. I'm gonna run that game, and you're going to participate. And when it comes to, I think in moments it can be okay to throw something at a player that they can't possibly save from,
Oh yeah.
because then you do things like let the cleric use their woe or wheel to actually make that possible,
Mhm.
or let your wizard. We have a wizard in our Wednesday game that uses portents. Has like 6 portents, and he can replace rolls. So I think by throwing a big deck save at somebody who can't possibly make that kind of gives openings for other players to shine in more supporty class roles, which is fun. But there definitely is a balance you got to be aware of.
In our game, for instance, you guys used that same method of killing the huge packs of wolves a bunch of times, but you were able to do that even though I knew it was coming. You were able to do that because you cleaned up everybody, made sure nobody got away so they couldn't warn the others. So I think that's the kind of information that DMs need to keep compartmentalized, is like knowing your character sheets and your stats and stuff. They're going to design encounters that way. But knowing what information your enemies in the game would have is super important. I think it's a completely different discussion, but
As a player, you shouldn't be metagaming your character. As a DM, you shouldn't be metagaming your enemies. You shouldn't have your enemies act in a way that they know something that the DM knows, but there's no possible way these enemies would know that.
yeah, exactly.
The wolves have wall hacks.
Yep, they just teleport through. Oh, they did Misty Step through the wall of force, but I think they had that beforehand. So, Mike, I'm not gonna rag on you for that.
Yeah, they already had Misty Step.
Yeah,
You enter the
Ridiculous.
tavern to go to sleep at night. Inside your room, you find the 6 wolves who you escaped in combat from. They were waiting for you here.
Okay, so let's get a ruling on this. Is it fair for a DM to know a player's stats, and does it create an interesting system for the DM to go in blind?
So I would say that is absolutely fair. It is the DM's job to know it, but also as a good DM, like, you're not using this to the detriment of the players. It's not your job to kill them or to beat them. So, I feel like this is a question asked in bad faith, essentially. So yes, DMs know stats, but also don't use them to metagame your players.
I'm gonna agree here. I think it's perfectly fine for a DM to know a player's stats, and know their capabilities. The one thing I'd say is like in a fight, I tend to not want to know my player's current HP because I feel that affects how I run those monsters. And I think sometimes that could feel cheap to a player. Like, oh, they knew I was at 15 HP, so they just decided to walk away. Like, that doesn't make sense. But yeah, if you're doing it, I think the key point for me here is, are you knowing their stats to provide a good experience and to give them opportunities to shine, or are you doing it to their detriment? And that's the deciding factor for me.
Absolutely gonna add on to Scott there. Like I agree, because for instance, like wolves seem to come up a lot this podcast. Let's roll with it. Like wolves are like smart hunters. They're not going to fight you to the death. If they know that a character is down at 15 HP, or there's a squishy but juicy looking wizard in front of them, they're going to go and pick on them rather than the very angry looking orc barbarian. And in the end, you just need to have a sense of trust between you and your DM, to that that they may know a bit more than you, but they're trying to use it for your good and enjoyment. Because if a DM doesn't have the opportunity to balance the encounter, so it's either you're going to womp the monsters or the monsters womp you, and neither feel that fun.
Yeah. Now, what about werewolves with druidic lycanthropy?
Well,
'Cause that's what we've been fighting. That's why it comes up a lot. We've been fighting those for like 4 sessions, but
that's in Curse Strahd.
yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
fun. That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess I'll make it unanimous. I think it's not only fair, but necessary for DMs to know stats in order to properly design encounters to make the game fun for players. Like Chris said, you can't use it in a metagamey way. You can't use it as a DM to try to kill your players in like an adversarial way. You need to know it so you can design encounters properly so that your players have fun, which is the most important part of playing D&D.
Cool. And I guess we have a ruling on that one, and I'll introduce the last topic here for the session. which is a Twitter post by Songbird Madame. The post is to any Dungeons and Dragon players and DMs, is it frickin' normal for a DM to make an adventure so boring for several sessions in a row? Please let me know.
Oof. Ouch. So I don't know if it's normal, but it's scarily common from what I've seen from RPG horror stories. I know people aren't always posting about like their fun games, and a lot of the time, Reddit and Twitter is just a lot of people bagging on games that they didn't enjoy. But I think that you can really get sometimes into the storytelling point from a DM where you're trying to tell your story without getting your players involved enough, and it can become really, really boring for players.
Yeah, I was in a campaign where it was a hex crawl, and it was milestone leveling, so you'd only level if you've completed certain things or found certain hexes. And we spent a good 8+ sessions, possibly closer to like 10 sessions, at I think level 4. And that was brutal because the pacing didn't feel good. The level 5 is a pretty big milestone for a lot of characters. Extra attack and things like that come up at level 5. And you guys know from my characters, I like these weird, stupid, non-optimal multi-classes. I have a vision for my character, and it often takes me to like level 8, 9, 10 to actually incorporate those different classes to have my character be what I want it to be. And the pacing here was just too slow. I actually had to bow out and tell the DM like, "Hey, I don't think this game's for me." I was respectful. I wasn't rude about it, but I had to actually be like, "Hey, I don't think this game's for me. The pacing's just not quite what I expect, and I'm gonna have to kind of bow out. Can I write myself off?" And I wrote myself off. There was a dryad in the woods that my character had been kind of like enthralled by a little bit, so I wrote myself off as like her coming and enthralling me and me kind of walking into the woods with her.
Just a
Um,
Jane Eyre-esque walk in the woods. I like it.
it
Wait, you
was
literally just bowed out by running away to become a fuckboy?
no, I
Were
bowed
you a
out.
horny bard?
No, I wasn't. I was actually an orc warrior whose wife was slaughtered, and this dryad reminded me of her beauty, and I walked out into the woods with her, never to be seen again. But yeah, I think pacing is so important. No one, level 3, level 4, like some of those lower levels can feel they're not boring, but if you play 10 sessions at that level, yeah, it can feel very repetitive and boring. Players want to level up, they want to feel powerful. Let them do it.
Yeah, so this is an interesting question because boring can also be a very subjective thing. And like on one hand, as Scott was saying, 10 sessions at level 4, the lack of progression makes it extremely boring. But also, like, someone else could find different things boring. Like, maybe there's a lot of, like, it's a very role-playing heavy session, and that's really not your jam. And I think part of this question isn't so much, like, a strict ruling on, like, is it normal, is it not? It's more to think about what do you want to get out of D&D, and is this game going to bring it to you? Because there are players who think that extended combat with lots of people where, you know, it takes a lot of time to get to their turn, that's boring. Other people think that lots of role play where it's nothing but just, you know, character talk investigation is boring. And so I think when you ask this question, a big part of it is look at the campaign, talk to their players, talk to the DM, and figure out if this is the way the game's going to be. And there's a chance it may not be. And it's not that it's right or it's wrong. It's just it's not the same for you. You know, that's like, you know, you can't, you know, try on a shirt and say, is it normal for the shirt to not fit me? Like, there's other sizes. Try those on first before you say it's the shirt's problem.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I like that analogy a lot. Like, personally, I love the RP portion of D&D. I think it's some of my favorite stuff happens like in between combats and like in those exposition times, puzzle solving, and just like sitting down and player interaction. Even as a DM, if I'm not a player and I'm DMing a game and my players want to talk and have a conversation and hash out like inter-character relationships, I'll sit there and listen to that for like 20 minutes without interrupting, because sometimes I think that's great.
Oh yeah, like I think that's a good point you raised there, because the DMing, when you're the dungeon master, I feel like and you guys can argue with me about this, you have the hardest position on the table, because you have to basically manage the play styles and what's kind of quote unquote fun, which is a very subjective, odd, and sometimes difficult thing for like you and some for plus people, and that's very hard to do sometimes when like you're not the exact same as everyone around you. My partner who got me into D&D, like I love her to bits, but is a murder hobo loot goblin sometimes who cannot stand RP. She's played every one of my games and I have no problem with that, but sometimes I understand it does not mesh with people. Some of the other players I play with a very long time are RP, and they RP a lot and they want to be a superhero and crush things. But when we play Curse of Strahd, and you know how Curse of Strahd, like you kind of get ground down by the grim reality of Barovia sometimes. Like that's not fun for that guy either. You just sometimes need to just have, like, what's unfortunately very common, I feel like, is there's people not having a open discussion with their DM. Hey, I'm not having fun. What can we do about it? Or hey, this game's not for me. But people just stick on because they feel socially obligated for some reason.
Yeah, and I think it has to be an open discussion. And if you're listening to this episode and you're having some of these problems, reach out to your DM and have a chat with them, and you can be open about it and don't be rude, and just be like, hey, like, are we planning on leveling up soon? I feel like our progression's a little slow. What can we do to fix that? I thankfully most of the DMs I played with are very open and stuff. Like, for example, in Mike's campaign, the moment Rickper left, Mike let me actually swap one of my fighter levels to Bloodhunter, because it just made sense, and she was furious and she wanted to prove Rickper wrong and things like that. And I think DMs can be pretty open to that stuff if you just approach it openly and from a like calm place. And yeah, I think it's super subjective, and this is the importance of session zero. If you're listening and haven't listened to that episode, take a look at kind of our backlog here and look at session zero episode. It talks about some of the topics and some of the expectations around a campaign. So verdict on that one for me. Boring is subjective. As a DM, it's your job to make the game fun for you and your players. And, sometimes that requires discussion and an open discussion. And sometimes the table just isn't the right fit for somebody. I think pacing, progression, balance of RP and combat, I think those can all be important things to look at and talk to players about. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a verdict on this one. I think this is just about discussion and openness, and it's very subjective. And if you're not having fun, that is something you need to talk to the DM about. And if the table doesn't suit you, you might just have to nicely say goodbye and walk away from that table and find something that fits you a little better.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Like, this isn't one with an open and shut answer. Is it normal? I mean, that depends on what you think is interesting. And I think it's really up to you to find a DM who works with that. And, DM's trying to engage their players. But at the end of the day, you can't make everyone happy. And sometimes you just got to, find the right kind of campaign that's going to keep you engaged.
I mean, yeah, like I feel like this is a very open-ended kind of topic here. Like whether or not, this is normal. I actually think, unfortunately, yes, because I think sometimes a lot of people don't want to talk about these things with their DMs or with their fellow players because they're worried about opening a can of worms they don't want to listen to the answers to. But I don't think that's right. I think people should absolutely talk to each other. But at the same time, sometimes fun is very subjective because I've played with people who like to be kind of like a quote audience member. They just like to sit in the back and just kind of like watch everyone do their thing and like talk on role play, and they're just kind of there to experience it, and that's fun for them. But whereas some people like it's not their cup of tea, and that's fair. But again, talk to your DMs.
Yeah, I think I'll echo that. You just need to talk it out. I don't know if it's normal for games not to be fun. I wouldn't want to play in a game where I wasn't having fun. And I think that you just need to have an open discussion session zero about what the expectations are for that campaign. If it's going to be mostly RP, people that are combat heavy probably aren't going to want to play in that. If it's going to be mostly combat, people that want to have a long epic story and like build relationships between characters probably aren't going to want to have fun with that, or probably aren't going to have fun with that. So It's really about communication between your players and your DM and making sure that everybody's having fun. And I think that's the main job of the DM, is to make sure that your players are happy and that you're having fun running the game. And I think that is all we wanted to cover for tonight. So, Lynn, thank you for joining us, our first guest, which was fantastic. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Are you working on anything? Do you have anything fun you want to chat about before we let you go?
Well, I mean, non-D&D related, I'm trying to get at least 0.5 KD in Apex Legends. I played this with Scott, my 1-star Uber driver. But aside from that, I just go to work, play D&D, rinse and repeat.
I'm Mike, and as always, if you need to slide to a DM's DMs, you can DM us at DMs Discuss on Insta, Twitter, or Facebook, or catch us on email at dmsdiscuss@gmail.com.
I'm Chris, and remember to cast Awake on your phone so it'll literally come and tell you, tug at your sleeve when it gets a new episode on your favorite podcatcher app.
I'm Scott, and you're gonna need those spell slots back. Enjoy your long rest.